In my career, I've missed over 9,000 shots. I've lost 300 games, and 26 times I was asked to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over and over in my life, and that is why I succeed. These are the famous words by arguably the greatest basketball player of our times, Michael Jordan. One of the biggest things that's holding people back from starting a new side hustle or a new business is the fear of failure, which is totally understandable. It's the fear that if you take the shot, you might miss. But the truth is, if you don't take the shot, you also can't make it. At some point, you will undoubtedly make a bad product. You'll send the right order to the wrong person, or you'll ship the wrong order to the right person. I literally just did this recently. You'll make a mistake on a label, on your website, whatever. And guess what? It's totally okay. If you're never messing up, you're not taking enough chances. This video is going to be jam-packed with starting and running a successful candle business in 2023. All right, so get out your pen and your notepad and let's get started. Actually, scratch that. I would honestly just recommend watching and listening and just soak everything in the first go round. Then you can come back later with your pen and paper, watch it again, and make specific notes as you want. For me, I find the best way to soak in new information is to listen intently the first time and then come back and listen passively while note-taking the second time around, but that's just me. About 10 years ago, I decided to take my hobby to the next level and start a candle business, a candle company by the name of Black Tie Barn. And truth be told, I was making and selling candles before that, but it was at this point I decided to really turn it into a full-fledged business. It has been a wild ride, but it has been a blast, and it has become successful, whatever that means. But over the span of running my business over the past 10 years, I have learned a lot. There are many things that I would do the same way and do them again, and then there's things that I would do entirely different. Times change, and so must we, and so should our methods. Part of running a business, large or small, is to adapt with changes and constantly improve to grow our business, preferably before everyone else does. In fact, hockey star Wayne Gretzky famously once said, "I skate to where the puck is going, not where it has been." Learning, growing, staying in tune with trends, and planning for the future is the key to success in any business. So last year, I released a video about how to start a candle business if I were going to be starting over from scratch. If you haven't checked it out yet, I would encourage you to still do so because it has a lot of relevant information, not just for the year 2022, but going forward as well. However, it is a year later and I want to update and add on to this topic. So if I plan to start a candle business in 2023, this is how I do it. Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you stopped by and I hope you enjoy this video. This video is going to be a longer video because there is a lot of information to cover. This video is going to cover a range of topics on how to start a candle business. And really a lot of this is going to apply to if you were to start any other kind of handcrafted business. We're going to talk about things like business and strategy, marketing and influence, the actual candle making itself, the behind the scenes part of a business, customer engagement, and so on. However, I don't want to make a video that's 3 hours long that nobody wants to watch, so I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty and every single detail in this video, but we're definitely going to hit the major points, and then I will let you know if I have other videos here on the channel that go into more details on anything specific. If you don't want to miss out on any other videos about candle making or running a candle business, and even some behind the scenes of my own business, then definitely consider subscribing to the channel if you're not. If you think you are, double check. Every once in a while, YouTube will automatically unsubscribe people. So give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. I really appreciate you being here. Let's dive right in. The first thing we're going to really talk about is just in general terms, business and strategy. Now this is a big one. Everything starts from here. This is the roots of everything. So the first question you have to decide or ask yourself, and you have the right to change your mind at any point, is whether or not you were intending to start a side hustle and make some extra income on the side or start an actual full-fledged business. Now, the truth is everything starts as a side hustle. I mean, there are exceptions to that where people just go full bore and dump a ton of money and everything into starting a business from day one. But for most people here on the channel, the idea is that you're starting a little side hustle to try to make a little extra money, improve your skill, and then build that up to a business. And that's actually what I did. But it's important to know the differences between the two. And a few major differences is that a side hustle really is not meant to scale all that much. And so it is easier to get started, it can be cheaper to get started, and it's usually much less stressful because you're not worried about certain things that usually encompass a full-size business. Now, everything that we're going to be talking about today really does apply to both of these, but some of them are going to apply a lot more to if you're actually wanting to run a full business, because it's going to be a lot more important if that's the target. But again, we all kind of start at the same place. And from that point, how far you want to go is totally up to you. But regardless, if you want to launch a full business or just do a side hustle, it's really important that you do enjoy this. And so that's why I would encourage you to kind of start small, do it a little bit as a hobby on the side, and make sure you actually enjoy doing this craft before you take it too far. In the words of Steve Jobs, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. All right, so knowing that you have to consider that in the back of your mind, the next and probably arguably the most important step of this entire business equation is whether you want to have a specific niche for your business, and we'll go into a little more detail here in just a second, Or if you're looking to be more of a general product. So think of the difference between something like Bath & Body Works or a Yankee Candle, one of these brands that have a lot of different scents and they really just have mass appeal. You're looking to offer a lot of variety at competitive pricing and try to make products that reach a lot of different people. Or do you want something a little bit more specialized, a little bit more focused, something that's very niche and marketed towards a specific target? So maybe you want to create a brand that's focused strictly on outdoors. Or maybe you're looking for something that mimics like a luxury fragrance. Or maybe you're wanting to make a man cave or a hunting collection. Or maybe you're a sports enthusiast and you want your entire brand to be around candles related to sports. Really, like those are just a couple quick examples, but there are tons of ideas and niches out there. Now, picking a niche doesn't necessarily mean you're picking a specific like type of candle, like your candle's reflecting a certain subject, like pets or something like that. Although that is one approach. A niche just simply means that you are focused on a specific look and feel and target audience rather than mass appeal. There are pros and cons to either approach, and neither one is right or wrong. And really the question comes down to breadth versus depth. With the general mass appeal, you have more breadth. You can reach more people, a wider audience. Whereas with a niche-focused brand, you aren't going to reach as many people. Not as many people are going to be interested in your product, but you're going to build up much more customer loyalty and you're going to do much better conversion with those customers because they're drawn to you for more than just your product. You're selling a brand just as much as you are a product. With a niche type brand, you're probably going to have higher cost of goods sold because things are a little bit more expensive and your packaging and presentation might cost you a little bit more, but you also tend to have higher profit margins on that type of business as well. So again, there's no right or wrong answer on which approach you want to go. Now for me, I started a brand that was sort of a hybrid of both, although it really is still leaning a little bit more towards mass appeal. So I make products that aren't necessarily focused on a specific audience or niche, and I use different collections in my brand to try to do that. So I would say mine's sort of a hybrid, but if I were starting from scratch, honestly, at this point, because I already have a brand that is a little bit more large scale, wider audience type of appeal, then I would probably personally go for something a little bit more niche focused because one, I think it's a great idea, but also it would just be something new and different for me, and I would find that exciting. The main point is that whatever you choose, just make sure you have a vision and you want to really focus in and hone in on that vision. And after you've decided that, the next thing to do is to decide on your business name. Pick a logo, pick your domain, and really think about your overall business structure. But you really have to know what your main goal is first, a niche or mass appeal. Once you have an idea of that, then it's obviously a lot easier to come up with your name and your logo because you're going to gear that name and gear your logo and your design towards your purpose. And when it comes to setting up your business structure, most people are going to start as a sole proprietor, which just basically means you're doing business as yourself. And then you would register a fictitious name is what it's called. And that just means that you're doing business under a different name, but it's still you as a person doing business. I've got another video that goes into more detail on business structures if you're interested. The next step that a lot of people would go to is probably up to an LLC or limited liability company. There are some advantages to being an LLC, like some extra liability protection. It also makes you more of an official, structured business. It is really the next step when someone wants to really take their business to the next level. So once you've got your name and your niche and your logo and you've purchased your domain and all of that, make sure that you really tie everything around your brand, around your name, your brand. Everything should be focused and in harmony with each other. Even if you make additional collections or different parts of your business and part of your brand, it's really nice to tie everything together so that it's still recognizable. Brand recognition is probably one of the most important things you can have as a business. So even if you make something that's a little bit different than what you would normally do, it's still nice that a customer can see that and say, okay, that's still a Black Tie Barn product, for example. So even behind me, you probably can't see it very well, I've got 2 or 3 different collections behind me, but if you were to get up close and look, you'd easily be able to tell that it's the same, other than the fact that, my name's on it. You can tell that it's the same look and feel. Like, now there are a lot of products that look very similar in this industry and really a lot of different industries. But if you can do something to make sure it all ties together and create brand awareness and brand recognition, that's very, very important. The next thing that I would do is put a little bit more emphasis and focus on social media and marketing. I did not do this for the longest time, for a couple reasons. One, I didn't really know what I was doing. And 2, I don't really enjoy it that much. And that's just me personally. A lot of you probably already have a knack for that and may enjoy doing it. And if that's the case, you're ahead of the ball, especially these days, because this is where customers are spending most of their time, is on social media platforms. And that is where they will often see your products first, and maybe the only place they'll ever see your products. So knowing that, leveraging these platforms, leveraging these systems is really, really important. And I don't think I really have to tell you that at this point. I think everyone is aware of the power of social media. But what I do want to say is that I think it's important these days to focus on the audience more than on yourself, more than on your business and on your products. Audience engagement and relating to your customers, relating to your audience is so important. I truly think these days the best way to gain audience, gain traction, get potential virality is to relate and be natural. Be yourself and have fun with it. I think people really enjoy seeing someone just be themselves and natural, and rather than almost programmed like a robot and just kind of speaking like they would in an ad. Regardless of what you want to do, and regardless of which platform you choose, create a plan. So decide what platforms you want to use, decide how often you want to post on those platforms, try to be consistent with it, and use a content calendar or something like that to help you. If this is not your thing, then get someone else to help. There are social media managers out there, there are influencers, there are lots of people out there that are willing to help with something like this. This is not my strong point. This is not my favorite thing to do, and I don't spend enough time on it personally. So if I were starting over from scratch 2023, it'd be one of the first things that I looked at and probably invested in, whether that's time or money. The next thing that I would do is standardize as much as possible. And I should say that this is something I'm kind of wired to do anyways. I really am more of a process-driven type of person. I'm all about organization and the little details. But I took on way too much early on. Actually, I still do that, which is why I've added this point in. Because again, if I were to start something brand new in 2023, I would definitely pull things back. Instead, I would focus on what matters the most and keep everything as simple as possible. And one way to keep everything simple is to keep everything standardized. For example, I would minimize the type of jars or options on colors, whatever it is. I would try to minimize the amount of options I'm providing because it would make my life a lot easier, which means I can provide a better level of service to my customers. And then as you grow and you can bring in more help, then you can start adding some things back in if you want. But one problem with offering too many things, so let's use the example of candles. If you offer too many different sizes and options and configurations or several different jars, then what happens is it becomes very difficult to ship orders because now you're carrying all sorts of different boxes. I have like 25 different box sizes that I use depending on the order. That's kind of crazy because I don't know what products people are going to order, and I try to pack everything the most efficiently possible, which means sometimes an order needs to go in this box versus this box. I don't want to be using a box that's too big for small orders and vice versa. So I have a lot of different box sizes, which means I'm packaging so many orders differently than the previous one. And that just becomes daunting and becomes very, very hard to manage. And it becomes very, very hard when you have a lot of options to bring people in to help you. So recently I was really, really busy reopening my website, and someone said, well, you really need to get some help in there packaging your orders. I'm like, the problem is every order I've packaged has been different. How am I supposed to show someone how to do that without having to do every single package with them? It can be very overwhelming. And so I would honestly, it would be one of the first things that I would focus on is keeping things more simple, standardizing everything so that I only have to worry about 1 or 2 or 3 different boxes and that's it. And then everything's very cookie cutter when it comes to packaging orders and shipping them out. It becomes more efficient, it becomes faster, and honestly, it's saving time and money as well. Because when you are standardizing things, you can purchase more of that thing. Rather than spreading your funds and resources over several things, you can buy more of 1 or 2 things, which means you get better pricing and volume discounts. And so you're saving time, you're saving money, it's more efficient. And if I were to experience a lot of cost savings by doing this, I would just pump that into more marketing probably. So next I want to talk about product photography. Now, there are people that do believe that product photography doesn't matter all that much. As long as you've got a decent looking photo, you're fine. I would argue to the contrary by 1,000% if that was possible. The reason I don't believe that, and I think that focusing on product photography is important, is really for 2 main reasons. One, everyone else is, which means you really need to try to keep up. You want to take products that look good, so when you post them on your social media and your website or wherever you're putting photos, you want them to look good. And you don't want someone to see 9 different products in a row and then they get to yours and it's, the lighting's awful and it's dark, it's hard to see, it's blurry. That just doesn't look good. Am I suggesting that you need to spend a bunch of money on professional photos? No, I don't believe that. Which leads me to the second reason I think this should not be ignored, and that is because it's easy these days to take good quality photos. Every phone has amazing cameras these days. Whether it's Samsungs or iPhones, they take incredible photos. There's also a ton of free information and YouTube videos showing you how to take great photos. It is not near as complicated as it used to be. You don't have to have fancy equipment, and you don't have to be a professional photographer to take good looking photos. So I would spend some time on product photography, and the good news about it is, once it's done, the return on investment of a good looking photo is incredible. You only have to take the photos once. You spend some time taking good photos, getting them complete, and then they just keep paying off because you don't have to keep doing it unless you want to change or add new photos, but they have a great return on investment. Now, if you're looking for a good, simple, easy way for you at home to take good product photos, I would consider looking up a photography Lightbox kit. that you can find on Amazon. I will have one linked in the description below. On a recent video, I showed it, talked about it a little bit more detail. But for 50 or 60 bucks, you can get a great little all-in-one kit that is mobile, by the way. Comes with a bunch of different backdrops, comes with the lights built in. It's a great little system to take quick photos. All right, so you've got your niche, you're starting your business, you've got your name, your brand, your logo, talked about a social media strategy, standardizing your processes as much as possible, product photography, which all of that leads to the next thing, which is your website or where you're planning on selling your products. You don't have to start with a website. You can do this in person. You can do these at craft shows. In fact, if you're just getting started, I highly recommend doing as many craft shows as you can. It is a great way to get experience, get exposure, get comfortable is probably the best thing. You learn a lot about yourself and your business and your customers and your products by going to these shows. It is often the most nerve-wracking thing for people to do if they've never done it before, to kind of get out of their shell and go to a physical event like this. But once you do it, it gets easier every single time, and the amount you learn is amazing. But if you decide you want to sell online, you've got two primary options. Now, there are other options. You can sell like wholesale through certain websites like Faire. You can get on Amazon. There are certainly other outlets, but the two primary choices, if you were to start an e-commerce business, is whether or not you want to sell on Etsy or do you want to have your own website like on Shopify. Now, I am a strong proponent of using Shopify and having your own website. I know a lot of people that start on Etsy and then move to a website, but I don't know really anyone that goes the other direction. There are pros and cons to both. If you are not sure, I plan on doing a video on the differences between Etsy and Shopify. But to summarize, a few key things to consider is Etsy is easier to get started, although Shopify has made it very easy these days to do so. But it's easier to get started, it's cheaper to get started, and you've already got a built-in audience on Etsy. The advantages of Shopify is you can scale a lot more. You have a lot more flexibility. You can actually design a brand around it, where on Etsy that can be really challenging because you don't get to customize much. On your own website, you can customize everything you want. So go to my website if you'd like to check it out and see a little bit of what I've done, but there are many much better websites than mine. You can control things better like your email list and like in shipping and coupons and discounts and promotions. It's much easier to market and promote your own website compared to Etsy as well. And most people long-term will find that running your own website on Shopify ends up being much cheaper in the long run. And that is because of Etsy's listing fees and transaction fees, whereas Shopify, like a traditional website, you're paying a hosting fee for your site, but you're not paying a listing fee for every single product you got on your website. So you have a lot more control, and again, that is what I would recommend. But if you are just getting started out and that is not something you want to deal with early on and it's not your thing, then Etsy is still a very reasonable choice. And again, some of these are personal preference. But if it was me starting a business in 2023, which is the point of today's video, I would still be going with Shopify, which is where my current site is hosted as well. You got your website, you got a place to sell your products, you've got your brand, you got your logo, you got all that done, right? Now it's time to think about pricing your products. Now I can't give you some just magic answer here. This is going to depend on a number of factors. I've got a couple videos on the channel that talk about pricing, but the long story short is you've got to decide some pricing at some point. Now this is flexible, it will change over time. But there are a couple of ways to approach this. The most common is whatever the price to make your product is, which means you need to be tracking that. You can double that if you want to sell wholesale, or you can times it by 4 if you want to sell retail. Now, that is general fine advice. There are some problems to that. Early on, as a brand new maker or brand new business, the cost for you to make your products is going to be very, very high. And by that, I just simply mean that it's cheaper for larger businesses to make their products than it will be for you, because you're buying less volume, which means you're purchasing products and raw materials in less bulk, so your costs are higher. Selling it at an extremely high price point of 4x or 2x can be really, really difficult. So I sort of recommend a hybrid, and that is you do need to cover your costs and making sure that you're actually generating a profit. But I wouldn't focus so much on generating a specific profit like 2x or 4x. In fact, I don't even know that I'd worry about wholesale, because it's very, very difficult until you get your costs lower to make any money on wholesale, or even get someone that will purchase them at that price for wholesale. So instead, what I would focus on is finding a place that you can price your products that you do cover your costs and make a profit, and then trying your best to merge that with where you think you can competitively fit in the market. Now, remember, this is not long-term advice. I am not in any way saying to undercut or undersell yourself or undervalue your products at all. But I do want you to be able to get some sales and start growing. And I think this is the best way to do it. Make sure you're covering your cost, make sure you're making a profit, but focus on traction and growing a little bit more at this stage than you are about your profits, your overall profits. There's a lot of debate on this topic, and there's so many people that say, don't undervalue, don't undersell your products. You've got to be making enough money to survive. For one, again, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I don't think you should undervalue your work or your products. All I'm simply saying is that as a new business owner, you are making sacrifices early on. Part of starting a business, at least a business you really want to grow, is being willing to delay gratification, which means you're going to keep your money reinvested back into your business, and you're not going to be taking much profit at all. You're trying to grow a business. And if you do this properly at this stage, then you'll see plenty of profits down the road. But I find too often that everyone's focused way too much on a profit margin early on. And so they're selling the products at prices that are really, really hard to attain. Now, depending on your niche, depending on your brand, if you can get those prices, then by all means do it. In fact, I would always say try to sell it for whatever price you can. All I'm saying is just to consider pricing and think about it a little bit differently when you're a new business. What worked well for me is I knew that I was making thinner margins early on, but I was pricing my products for the future. I was pricing my products knowing what the margins would be, what my costs would be in about a year from now or 2 years from now. Once I had scaled a little bit, my costs had come down. So that is what I had set my price point at. And that really, really helped me out because I was able to generate more sales and grow a little bit faster. But again, everyone is going to be a little different, but for me, I'd probably still do roughly the same thing I did before. All right, so coming up, we're going to be talking about a focus on customers, engagement, conversions, some more behind the scenes aspects of running a candle business. Of course, we're going to be talking about candle making itself, but I'd be remiss if I failed to mention one of my favorite places to learn new skills and grow my current skills. So a quick thank you to the sponsor of this portion of today's video, Skillshare. You have heard me mention Skillshare in several videos as a great platform with unlimited access to thousands of online classes. If you're looking for some help on things that we just talked about, like product photography, marketing, building a website, or simply starting and running a business, consider checking out Skillshare. For example, Content Calendars Made Easy, Save Time and Develop a Personal Brand by Chanel Hayes is a great class for those looking to get started with small business social media and content calendars, like we talked about. There are many other great classes to build on this topic, but this is an excellent one to get started with. The good news is you can take this class completely free. In fact, the first 1,000 people to click on the link in the description below will get a free 1-month unlimited access to Skillshare. So you can take this class and any others you choose to take completely free. These days, being new to something or inexperienced in something like running a business is not the detriment that it used to be. Fortunately, services like Skillshare can help you quickly bridge that gap. All right, so let's continue with the next thing that I would consider trying to do if it were me. One thing that I've always wanted to do is help customers choose a fragrance without them being able to physically smell the product. This was a question I know that when I first started selling candles online, people were like, well, how do people know what they're gonna smell like? Is it hard to sell candles online if people don't get a chance to smell it first? For starters, I would say that hasn't been near as much of a concern as I thought it would be, but there are two options that come to mind. The first is the obvious one, and that is you can provide samples. This can be kind of challenging though, because it's hard as a small business to give away too much for free. Unless you really know what's gonna convert to sales, it can kind of be hard early on. Not only that, but samples don't always truly reflect your product. For example, you might provide a small sample like a tea light or a wax melt so people can get an idea of the scent, but they're not gonna burn that the same way they would a full candle. In fact, you kind of hope they don't, right? Because a small little tea light is not gonna provide the scent throw that a larger candle would. So if they get the tea light, they might light it and think, well, this doesn't really have that great a hot throw. Well, of course not. A tea light really generally doesn't have a lot of hot throw, and if it does, it's gonna be in a small room. Whereas your 2-wick large candle might light up a whole kitchen. So sometimes it can actually negatively impact your customer's perception of your products. So if you do wanna offer samples, I would do it in something like a wax cube, where it's just so they can give it a sample of the scent and not an actual product burning. Or you can offer a sample collection where it is like a 2-ounce tin of all your candles, and let your customers know these are meant to be burned in small rooms just to give an idea of what the fragrance is like. And then charge something that is reasonable so a customer can sample many of your scents for a pretty small, affordable price. Now, the other idea that I've been kicking around is a fragrance picker tool on my website. Now, I don't have one there right now. Actually, on my website, I have a filter list that kind of helps customers choose by certain types of fragrances. So a lot of people want maybe florals or fresh scents, and others want sweet bakery scents or spicy scents or woodsy scents, right? And so filters on your website can help in that way, but I thought about adding some kind of fragrance picker tool that kind of guides the customer along their choice. So the first question might be, do you prefer spicy or fruity? So sort of like the filters are set up, I would have maybe a list of questions, and as they answer a question, it sort of, using conditional logic, brings them to the next choices. And then the idea would be using all their answers to kind of build a profile and then recommend them a few scents or recommend them a few candles. So sort of like the filters, but in more of a guided way that really helps them fine-tune what they're looking for. It's not something I've done before, but I've been kicking around the idea. All right, so before we get to the candle making part of running a candle business, I want to talk about a few quick things about some of the behind-the-scenes things of running a candle business. One is about budgeting and being able to get started, because we're all coming from different places. Some people have the money ready to start this endeavor. Other people really don't have the money. And actually, the reason they're wanting to start this is because they're looking for an additional side income. The good news is, everyone can start this, and you can start this with fairly minimal investment. It just might take you a little bit longer to get to your ultimate goal. But there are several ways to start this journey. Author Jack London once said that it's not always the ability to play a good hand, but the ability to play a poor hand well. We're all going to be dealt different cards here. We're all going to have access to different resources, and it's just about doing the best you can with the resources you have. So if you only have X amount to invest and get started, then do your research and try to invest in the proper thing. Like maybe you want to start with a kit. Maybe you want to start off with just a small candle to get started. Or maybe you want to use your funds to get a friend to help you and have them chip in with you and you guys build this together. Maybe you want to use your funds to purchase a course or buy a class. There's a lot of things you can do to get started, and it's going to be ultimately up to you how you want to get started with your available resources. I just wanted to offer this as words of encouragement because a lot of new candle makers are taken back sometimes when they see another new candle business growing very quickly. Well, chances are they had access to additional funds and resources, and they were able to scale things up faster simply because of that. And so while we do all start with a different set of tools, we are all still generally starting at the ground level. And so while some people might get a little bit of a head start, once you gain some momentum and get some building blocks in place, you'll eventually build that foundation, and then it'll be much easier to start moving ahead a little faster. The next item that I wanted to mention is about bookkeeping, and we're not going to get into the details on this in this video, or this would be like a 2-week class, but something you do need to consider starting a new business or side hustle is keeping track of your records. Expenses, your sales, your inventory, all of that is really, really important, and it's going to help you do your bookkeeping, whether you do it yourself or you hire someone to do that. And then at the end of the year, you hire a CPA or an accountant to take care of your taxes for you. They're going to want these records. So from the very moment you get started, the better you can track all these receipts and expenses and invoices and everything from the very get-go, the better off you'll be. Personally, for me, I use QuickBooks, my full accounting system, and then I use another system along with that, and I would still continue to do that here if I were to start a new business today. Similarly related to that, as I just talked about expenses, it's very, very important as a new business owner, if you're brand new to running a side hustle or business, is to make sure that you're tracking things separately from your personal life. So anything you're purchasing for the business, you want to keep those receipts, and you should really do it from a separate business account. So I would recommend opening a business checking account. You can usually do it for like $100, and anything you're planning on spending for your business, do it for money in there. If you have to move money from your personal to your business checking just to start off with some funds available, then do that, but try your hardest to avoid using the same personal account for mixture of expenses between personal and business. It gets really, really messy, really, really hairy, and it can be really hard to sort out later. And the last thing I'll mention for now about behind the scenes part is I touched on earlier, and that's about your inventory. Most of you know that I use a system called CraftyBase, and I have other videos that go into details on this. But the purpose of that system for me is to help track my inventory, my raw materials, my finished products, my orders, my recipes, helps me figure out pricing. It offers price guidance because it knows the cost of your materials and how much it costs for you to make a specific product. And then once it knows that, it offers some recommendations on what you could price your products at and the margins that you would get. So there's a lot of things that CraftyBase can do, and so I would really highly encourage you to check it out. I'll have it linked in the description below, as well as an overview video that I've done showing you the key features of what that software can do for you as a business. I've been using it for 6 or 7 years out of the 10 years I've been in business, and it's just continued to grow with me. But it's very, very important to track your inventory for several reasons. One, if you don't know what you have, you don't know what you need. And it's very easy to run out of stuff, and then you end up waiting for weeks for new materials to come in. And that can really bind up your business and lead to a lot of things just constantly being out of stock. And also knowing your inventory and the costs to acquire that inventory is what helps you determine your cost of goods sold, which we just talked about. And that can help you define your prices. As a handcrafter, it's more important than other businesses. Like, you just have to be able to manage your inventory. And trying to do that on your own, at first it's fairly easy to do it on just a spreadsheet or something like that. And if you want to do that, that's totally fine. The problem with a simple spreadsheet, it just doesn't offer you the amount of flexibility and functions and features that a full system meant to manage inventory would do. And managing your inventory is not something you want to wait on before you start doing, because it's much harder to go back retroactively and try to catch up on your inventory than it is just to do it from the very beginning. So for me, and my advice to you, if you're just getting started, would be to, whatever way you want, track your inventory as much as you can early on. And then whenever you're ready, you can look at a product like CraftyBase to help you with those needs. All right, so to this point, we've talked a ton about the things you need to consider when it comes to running a business, specifically a candle or handcrafted business. However, we can't do a video about running a candle making business if we don't talk somewhat about candle making itself. So let's get into that. Now, caveat here, I think it's fairly obvious that I'm not going to go into the step-by-step instructions on how to make a candle in this video, although I have plenty of videos on this channel that show some behind the scenes of making a candle, show some demonstrations, do some tutorials, and then I've got a full video that really shows me explaining the steps of making a candle with a voiceover. So check those out if you want, but again, this is not meant to be like, here's step one to make a candle. Instead, this is going to be about, if I were to start my business in 2023, how I would approach candle making, like the materials and what I'd be focused on and why when making my candles. So my first tip would be to choose your jar or style of candle first. Now, if you're making pillar candles, you don't have a jar, but if you are making container candles, standard jar candles, my advice would be to pick your vessel, your jar first, or the style, the shape, the size, all of that from the very, very beginning. I know a lot of people recommend choosing a wax first. I disagree with that. And the reason is everything that we've talked about before this point. Because the most important thing about starting a business is your brand, your look, your feel, what you're going for, your niche, all of that. And what is the first and most powerful way that people are going to relate to your brand? By what they see. So once you've decided on your look and your feel, your brand, your presentation, all of that, you obviously want to choose a vessel or a jar that matches that, right? You want to sell a product that fits your brand, that fits your theme. And so I would definitely start that route. And as I mentioned earlier, if I was starting a niche-based business this time, then I would pick a jar that reflects that niche or that fits the style that I'm looking for, that I'm going for. So after I've chosen my jar and my style, whether that's glass jars or color jars or tins or pillar candles, whatever the case may be, I would then choose my wax. So I know the vessels that I need to make the candles in, so now I'm going to start testing and sampling waxes in those vessels, knowing that the thing that's not going to change here is my vessel, right? So the first thing the first variable that I'm going to start experimenting with is the wax. Now there are a ton of wax options out there, and what you want and decide on is going to differ across the board for everyone. So I can't tell you what to use here. What might be important to you in a wax might not be important to someone else. If you're looking for a soy-based wax, there's a ton of those options. If you're looking for a coconut-based wax, there's some of those options. If you're looking for a para-soy or a para-coconut or a beeswax or an apricot blend, there are tons of options when it comes to waxes. So this is ultimately going to be up to you. Now, I have a couple videos on the channel, one that is sort of a review of some of my favorite type of waxes this past year. And then another one that is 5 common waxes that a lot of people just start with out of the gate. They are not an exhaustive list. In fact, the new waxes are hitting the market all the time, and there's plenty of waxes that I've never used myself. My suggestion here would be to check out some suppliers, preferably ones that are close to you so you can save on some shipping, but ones that offer several varieties of waxes, and I would try a sample pack of all of them if you can afford it. If you can't afford to purchase a sample like 5 or 10 pound pack of all these different waxes, then just do some Google searches, hit some Facebook groups, whatever, to start getting some feedback and reviews and some suggestions on good waxes to start with. If you're not a member of my Facebook group, the Candle Making Work Group on Facebook, I'll have it linked below. Go ahead and join it. You'll get a lot of people that offer some great options in that group. All right, so you picked your style and your jar. Now you've tested several waxes. Eventually you're going to settle on a wax. And when you're choosing a wax, you're looking for the physical characteristics, like the way it looks, the surface, the adhesion, the color of the wax sometimes even. Of course, you're looking at which ones you can successfully burn and wick properly in the jar that you chose, which is why I always start with the jar first. And then you're obviously looking for scent throw. Some waxes are better about a good, strong throw versus others, and some are just picky on fragrance oils. So you're looking for all these things and you're evaluating them, and then once you've decided on your wax and your jar, the next thing to do is start looking at your fragrance oil options. Now, this is where a lot of candle makers get into trouble, including me, is there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of fragrance oils in the world from all these different manufacturers and suppliers. And you're going to want them all. just like me. I've got so many fragrance oils I've never touched. I mean, you don't want to know how much money I have in fragrance oils. It's ridiculous. So at this stage, just try to be very, very careful not to go crazy and spoil yourself with fragrance oils. They are expensive, and it's just really, really hard to stop. It can be addicting. Now, fortunately, something you've already done at this point will really help you guide your choices on fragrance oils, and that is the type of business you've decided to start. Your brand. Are you focused on a niche? What are you going for? If you know that, then certain fragrance oils are going to fit that niche, that theme, that brand better than others. So you might already, by this point, have an idea of the type of fragrances you're looking for. And once you've narrowed it down, then it becomes easier to start sampling ones and seeing what you like. Now, if your brand or your theme is something where a lot of different fragrance oils can work, and there's really no limit, then my suggestion would be to keep it simple early on and pick a few different oils from different fragrance profile categories. So pick a couple spicy, a couple sweet, a couple florals, a couple fresh fragrances, a couple woodsy fragrances, and so on. So you can mix that and match however you want. But my tip would be to pick a few from different categories so you have some variety, unless, again, you have a niche or a theme where certain fragrances match that brand. And if that's the case, then 100% go that route. So you've got your jars and your wax and your fragrance oils, but you've got to test these candles, which means you also need to purchase wicks for your candles. The reason I've waited on wicks to this point is it's going to heavily depend on your jar and your wax, probably most importantly. Now, fragrance oils will affect wicking as well, and that's why it's important to always test a new fragrance oil. Some fragrance oils are harder to burn than others. Even recently, I made 4 new products, and 3 of them used the same wick, and the other one used a wick that was 4 sizes larger. Like certain cinnamon fragrances can be tough to burn. But regardless, it's time to think about your wick. Now, depending on the wax you chose and depending on your jar, you might need 1 wick, you might need 2, you might need 3, and you'll just have to figure this out through experimentation, through testing, through places like Facebook groups or even this channel. I've got videos that talk about how to test your candles. In fact, I have a video all about wicking as well. And so if you want to check that out after this video, definitely consider doing that as well. It's a long one as well, but it's kind of fun. When it comes to wicks, you have a lot of choices just like you do with waxes. And what wick type you choose is going to heavily depend on the type of wax you're using. Certain waxes need a hotter type of wick or a certain type of wick that can handle a little bit more of those corrosive natures of something like a soy wax. And then some other waxes burn a lot easier, which means some other wicks will do the job just fine. And depending on your wax, there might only be 1 or 2 wicks that you can use, and you don't really have a choice. And then there are other waxes where a variety of different wicks work just fine. It's just a matter of you picking one you like the best, testing them and seeing which one you think is overall the one you prefer. Now for me, the wick that I use primarily the most is Premier 700 series wicks. It is a 100% all cotton core wick. And the reason I use it is it works very well in a variety of different waxes. I would say to the point, at least of this video, probably 95% of my candles are using Premier 700 wicks. Now, another great benefit of this type of wick is it comes in a lot of different sizes. So the Premier 700 series starts at 700 and goes up to 799. Now they don't increment by 1, but they increment by like 5, and there's 29 different sizes currently in that series, which is great because it's a lot easier to fine tune and really dial in the correct size for your wicks for your application. So that was one of the first things that really attracted me to the wick in general, that type of wick. And then I've been using them ever since. And because I've been a proponent of them and been using them for so long, I've now actually become a distributor for those wicks as well. So I've worked with the manufacturer and said, hey, I'm using a ton of these wicks already. A lot of my viewers use a lot of the same materials that I do and also use these wicks, so I might as well sell them as well. So recently added to my website is a link under For Makers section of the menu where I have a link to these wicks. So if you want to check them out, go for it. If you already use these wicks, I've got every size listed. If you're brand new and have never used these wicks before and you want to try them, I do offer small packs of every size, or you can purchase the sample pack, which comes in a pack of 5 of every single size I sell. Totally up to you. Sort of a shameless plug, but the truth is I use a ton of these wicks, and if you're interested in trying them, they're there for you to explore. But regardless if you're using Premier 700 wicks or any other wicks like HTP, CD, Ecos, CDNs, zinc core, paper core, there's tons of options out there. And no matter which direction you go, obviously the point of this part of the step is you need to choose a wick. Because at this point now, you're going to start testing your candle. So when you test your candles, you're going to make a few candles with a few different wick sizes or types, or really whatever process you have for testing is fine. Everyone's a little bit different. And then you're going to narrow it down until you find the overall best performer. Now again, I've got a couple videos on the channel about my testing process. I'll try to remember to have them linked. In fact, everything we've talked about today, as I mentioned earlier, if I have more information on them, I will try to remember to link those videos. But you can always go to my channel, click on videos, and browse everything that I've got. There's a lot of videos there and a lot of different topics. So you can see a little bit about my testing process, not only the steps to my testing process, but also what I'm looking for when testing them. So at this point, you've got your jar, you've got your wax, you've got your fragrance oils, you've got your wicks, and you are testing your candles. And eventually you're going to narrow these down to your winners, and these become your finished products, your finished candles available to sell. So if you've gotten to that point for the first time ever, congratulations, you're now hooked. Real quick, let me back up. We talked about the materials for your finished product, right? But I wanna mention a few tools, supplies, gadgets that will help you achieve the result, actually help you use those materials, which probably should have mentioned beforehand. The first is some way to melt your wax. A lot of people start with the double boil method, which is you have a big pot on the stove with a little bit of water in it, you boil that, and then you put your pouring pitcher, which is the next thing I was gonna say, and that's got your wax in it, and you sit that in the pot. The boiling water heats up the wax inside the pouring pitcher and melts your wax down. And then depending on the type of wax you're using, you're going to follow different, recommendations on what temperature to heat your wax to, what temperature to add in your fragrance oil, what temperature to pour your candle. All of that is going to highly depend on your wax. Again, check out some other videos on that. But if you really aren't interested in the double boil method, which is a slower method, but it's very easy to get started with, then I would check out the Presto Pot method, which is basically a Presto pot that has a spout on the front, and you can actually put your wax directly in that rather than using a double boiler. It will safely heat your wax, just heat it slowly. And then with the spout on it, you can get these on Amazon. I'll have one linked in the description. And basically this is just a small scale version of a large wax tank, and it works great. A lot of people use these for a really long time. And then as you scale, you can invest in actual wax tanks and wax melters, but they can be kind of pricey, so most people start with the options that I just mentioned. You'll need something to stir your wax and your oil together in the pouring pitcher. Some people use spatulas, some use plastic spoons, wooden spoons. If you're gonna use a wooden one, make sure it's a wooden baking spoon that's already been treated. You don't want the wood to be absorbing anything. I've got some that I actually love using, which again, will be linked below. But essentially you just need some way to stir your materials together. Preferably something that's not porous and it's easy to clean. Now there are a ton of other little things here and there that you're gonna need. Talk about paper towels and thermometers and all these things, but I've got plenty of videos on the channel that kind of line item everything that you would want to purchase to start making candles. I've got a candle making supplies video. It was one of my first ever videos a year and a half ago or so. Then I got a recent one, which is some things that I think are some must-haves for people from Amazon and a few other suppliers. So check those out if you're looking for more of a detailed list of what you need, but essentially you're looking for some tools and supplies that help you make your candles. However, there is one more that I want to mention that at this point I'm starting to consider it a requirement because I like it so much, and that is the wick holders and wick tools from Norden Candle Supply. I've got a few recent videos that go into more detail on them, including an entire review video. I'll link one of them below, and there'll be a link to their products below as well. But these are lifesavers. They come in different colors. They come for every single jar that you might choose, and they help you place your wick in the jar centered perfectly. And then they have a holder on top that keeps the wick centered, so it's not just floating and leaning over and falling down into your liquid wax. So it keeps your wick perfect while the candle cools. I could not recommend them any higher than I do. Great product, great small business, highly recommend. Okay, so one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to making candles is, and it's sort of related to testing, is I would suggest that you get some test groups. It can be friends and family, but let me caution you, friends and family like to do one of two things. They're either way too positive and optimistic and only tell you good things because they want you to succeed and they want to make you feel good. And so they're always just going to praise your products, even if they need a lot of work. Or you got friends and family that are just overly critical and all they want to do is just bash on your products, right? They're always poking at something. And either way, neither is very helpful. So you're looking for something more objective here. You're looking for true, real feedback. Variety of ways you can do this. You can give away some products for free on Facebook group, on your website or whatever, with a requirement that they provide you some feedback. So provide them a form, like how would you rate the hot throw? How would you rate the look? How would you rate how long it lasts? How would you rate the fragrance? Whatever you want to do, but you're trying to incite some feedback about your products objectively. Or you can also create a consistent test group. So if you do have, so find like 5 to 7 people where it's the same people you use all the time. That way the feedback is consistent and they're almost comparing it against previous products, which helps you establish which ones are performing better than others. And same process though, you provide them candles and they provide you feedback. The other thing you can do is if you don't necessarily want to give something away free, maybe you offer them discounted, like highly discounted, like at wholesale price or at your cost, just to get some feedback as well. That way you're not really out any money, but you're still giving the candles away for really cheap and customers will provide you some feedback on them. Regardless, having a test group, no matter how you want to set it up, is very, very important in my opinion, and it's something I would do a lot sooner. So if I were to start a candle business now, I would do that from the very beginning. Once I have a proof of concept and I've made some successful candles, that would be the next step for me. Product research and getting feedback from your audience is so important when it comes to a product-based business, because it doesn't matter how good of a product that you think you made if no one else agrees. So not only can it give you some confirmation and some confidence about your product, but also shows you exactly what you need to work on to improve them. Either way, it's very, very helpful for your business. To wrap up the candle making part, there was one more thing I wanted to mention, and that is sort of the order of how to handle all of this. So I've thrown a lot at you about, setting up a business and picking a niche and marketing and social media and your website and business and all of that, right? I've thrown all that out there, and then I've also thrown in the candle making part, which obviously is the product part of your business. But I want to clarify something. In my opinion, if it were me starting this from scratch, I would not be making all of my products from the get-go and then focusing on the business and the marketing and the branding. I would start by sampling some materials and making a proof of concept candle or a few candles, making sure I can actually make decent products first and make sure I like doing it. Once I've done that, I'm going full bore on everything else we talked about. Marketing, social media, logo, branding, everything I want my business to be about, knowing now that I can make a successful candle. And then once I've got this, then I'll start gearing the rest of my candles and products to fit my brand. And then I'll start building up stock. So that would be the order that I do that, and you can do it however you want, but that's what I would do. So now that we've talked about, the obvious that you need to make candles and the order of how I would do that, as well as everything else, the business and the marketing, the social media and the website and behind the scenes and running a business and inventory and bookkeeping. So now that we've talked about all of these things that come together to encompass building a candle business, there are a few final tips and thoughts that I want to leave you with. The first is to listen to your audience. Not everyone is going to like your products. Don't let that discourage you. Use that as a tool, because it isn't a problem, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make your products even better. Bill Gates once said that your most unhappy customers are your greatest source for learning. The next tip that I would offer is to get help as soon as you can or as soon as you think you need it. Burnout is real. Eventually you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to feel like you just need some help. And instead of trying to push through it, like has always been a bad tendency of mine, I would suggest reaching out and trying to get some help at that point. Not only is it going to help you mentally and physically, but it's also going to add to the fun. You're going to enjoy the process more if there's someone else doing it with you. And now only you can decide when that time is. But I do think it's worth mentioning that it's important to know when to delegate and to get some help. It has easily been one of my Achilles heel when it comes to my business. It's easy to feel like you're losing some creative control and control of your processes and feel like that it's something only you can do, but at some point you just got to take the time to show someone else how to do it. Because guess what? You are losing little control. And I know what you're thinking. I don't want to lose control. It's fine. What if someone else can't do it as good as I can? They can. But what if they mess up? What if you mess up? But I'm not sure I can afford to. Can you afford not to? Look, I'm just having fun with this, but the truth is this has always been something very challenging for me, and is to get enough help when I need to. Because I always feel like it's taken me longer just to get help and show someone what to do than it would be just to do it myself. The problem is that that's a very dangerous self-fulfilling prophecy, and at some point you're going to keep saying that until you have no time left, no energy left, and you ultimately end up finding that you're still trying to do everything by yourself forever. I need to take an hour, a day, a week, whatever I need to just stop, get some help, show people what to do. It would save me so much time, energy, and stress later. Now, something else I think is really important these days, because every year there's more and more businesses starting, not just candle businesses, but in general, right? There's always seems to be more and more competition, which isn't a bad thing. There's plenty to go around, the demand is high enough. But I do think it's important to try to find one thing that makes you stand out apart from everyone else. It could be something about you and your story and how you got started and your passion. It could be something about your business, how your business got started, its purpose, its passion, or it can be something with your products. Maybe you carry a unique scent that no one else offers. Maybe you've got some crazy awesome theme or branding that really no one else does. Maybe you use some awesome, bold, creative colors. Maybe you offer deals and specials on your website that no one else does. Maybe it's the name of your products. Maybe it's how you bundle products together. Maybe it's the way you sell your products. There are so many things that you can use to set yourself apart. And honestly, that would be something I would focus on if I was starting over. Because at this point, I'm kind of riding on the curtails of a business that's just been established for a while now. So a lot of people just kind of know the name. And so it's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's really hard to build up to. And it just takes a long time. But if you were to come out of the gate and start with something unique from the get-go, It's so much easier to gain traction and to possibly get some virality or to get noticed and create brand awareness and brand loyalty. Because if you've got that one thing and people associate that to your business, your brand, you're just way ahead of everyone else. And the greatest thing is when you do this, you're not competing with someone else because it's just your one thing. Now, every business can have their one thing that's unique, but they're not the same. And that's the key part is you're not going to have every candle customer in the world. There's tons of people buying candles and tons of places to buy candles from. So you're not trying to get every customer in the world. You're just trying to get your customers to support your business. So having that one unique thing that keeps them coming back can be really, really powerful. All right, so get to work. Ideas are nothing without action. And in the words of Estee Lauder, I never dreamed about success. I worked for it. I know a lot of you are probably wondering, is this the best time to start a candle business? Well, no, it's not. The best time to start a business was yesterday, but the next best time is now. Thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel, and check out the resources in the description below, including the link to Skillshare. Because as a reminder, the first 1,000 people to click that link will get 1 month free unlimited access to Skillshare. I'll see you next time.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.